We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I'm actually going to be doing a bit of a mini review on the original Ressence watch debuted in 2010, the Ressence Series 1003. Very limited production. I believe there's only 50 pieces of these that were produced between the different variants. So I'm going to be flipping the camera around. I actually posted a picture of this on my Instagram and was surprised that so many people wanted more close-up pictures of the watch, the case, the components. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what I believe the pros and the cons. And I will say that stay tuned for the rest of this video because there's one very interesting caveat that absolutely grinds my gears, pun intended, with this watch. Very cool watch. I'll get behind the camera and show you what I mean by that, but there's one little thing that is actually the reason why I am moving this on to another dealer, because for me, I added this to my personal collection actually just today at the time of shooting this, and as I was doing something with the strap, that's all I'll say, I noticed that there's one little thing that I just cannot have this watch in my personal collection, but many people out there probably will not care at all. But I'm kind of an interesting character, I guess you could say. And guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com. We just got in a whole bunch of very cool watches, some State of Qatar, limited edition Tudor Black Bays, and a Pelagos as well. You never see the Pelagos with the State of Qatar dial, and some other limited editions, maybe a Harrods Tudor Black Bay, and so many others. We've been working around the clock here with the team to try to bring some very cool watches we think that people would enjoy, so make sure to check that out. So let's get behind the camera and do a mini review on this Ressence Series 1003. So here we have the Ressence Series 1003, which originally debuted in 2010. Extremely limited production to only 50 pieces. This particular example was sold in 2011 from an authorized dealer, and it features a worn titanium dial and is cased in a stainless steel 42 millimeter enclosure with, as you can see, wire lug design, or almost wire lug, and I'll talk about that later in the video. And actually, you could also get this watch in titanium as well, with different color variations on the dial. They did move over to the Series 1, which has a mixture of titanium and stainless steel on the case, though with this particular example, it does feature on the inside, which you cannot see because there is a rotor here, but part of the movement is actually constructed out of titanium for the weight saving capabilities. But this particular brand is created by an architect designer, Benoit Mintiens. He's a Belgian man, and the whole idea behind this watch was to create something unique and simple. And while certainly the design looks at distance to be unique and simple, actually almost free of any logos on the dial, except for there is a hand there at the 12 o'clock position on one of the subdials. What's interesting about this watch is, although it features a ETA 2824 2 e-Bosch, it actually also contains a custom Ressence orbital convex system to tell the time. And so, they took a stock at a movement and they created an incredibly advanced system that allows us to tell the time without any hands. So, well, with the exception of the logo on the dial. So as you can see here, the watch also does have this interesting crown design, or crown lock design, where you kind of slip your fingernail in this little hole there, or a crevice, and you pull it out, and this will actually allow you to set the time. Now, you set the time just by turning it, much like any other watch. It moves very slowly though, and that is largely because of the module that they created for this. And so you tell the time by, and it's interesting, it's actually difficult to display this because of how polished these subdial markers are, but you tell the time with the lines drawn on the dial. Points to the hour, as well as the minutes, running seconds, and AM PM indicator. And it's just kind of a marvel to look at as I go ahead and I twist the crown here. It's very interesting. And when you turn the crown here to set the time, while you notice the aluminum discs, they move. And by the way, aluminum was used in the disc to cut down on the weight, because when Ressence was building the watch, they knew that anything heavier than aluminum was just going to take too much power, and that would cause a lot of other issues with the watch, namely power reserve, winding, a lot of wear, tear, and stress on the watch. So they made them out of aluminum, and considering that this watch is just a little over 10 years old, it works perfectly fine. The amplitude is incredibly high, as well as the errors, the beat error, as well as the time difference per day. Certainly it looks like they were able to hit the mark on that one. But it's just actually very interesting to see. When you do move the crown, it moves very slowly, and there's a lot of pressure, and it requires quite a bit of torque to move this manually, because there's a lot of gears in that extra component which they've added to the watch in order to be able to show the time from the different discs, instead of just having very light and easy to work with hands where you'd normally have it on at a 28, 24. And so one thing I do want to touch on, and by the way, the case does feel rock solid, durable. It's interesting on the wrist. I'll slip it on here so you can kind of see. I have a 6.5-inch wrist, and so you can see it has a lot of presence. At 6.5, you could probably wear it, though for me, because the straps that Ressence makes, they just don't taper, I cannot add this to my personal collection because it wears a little larger for my 6.5. But the other thing I have to talk about is the strap changing ability on this watch. Now, I'll admit I have not held a lot of Ressence. In fact, only a couple, and I've not had the opportunity to try swapping straps on them. Though I did with this watch, I wanted to put something more tapered on it. And the issue I ran into is when you look at these wire lugs, or almost wire, because I don't want to quite call it wire lugs, because that's Panerai wire lugs, simple strap change. This is very difficult. I cannot give it the pleasure of calling it wire lugs. They have this interesting torques, and that's not the difficult part of the strap change. And I won't do this live because it was such a hassle to put this back together. When you do this, you take out these two screws, and in the manual it says it's very simple. You pull out these screws there, the torque screw there, and on the other side, so for both of the sides. But when you actually disassemble that, there are these tiny slivers of metal that go into almost a channel on the underside of this whole component. So the lugs don't come out by themselves. They actually come out with a piece of the case. And you can see it right there, that a piece of the case comes out, and then it leaves kind of this channel on both the top and bottom side of where normal lugs would be, and kind of the whole strap comes out as a system. Though what that means is, unless you want to fidget with these tiny little pieces of metal, which are not displayed here, that are on the underside of the watch, then you have to use the whole Ressence strap system. You have to actually get a whole new piece here. Otherwise, you're working with very tiny slivers of metal that looks like, honestly, they were cut out of paper clips and shoved in. And the strap is really held on by these tiny little pieces of metal on the underside of this that prevents the lugs from coming out. And you can see they do wiggle and give just a little bit. And that's really my only kind of gripe, I would say, with the watch. Overall, besides that, if you do like this kind of avant-garde style design, the quality is here in the case construction. Obviously, the complication here with the disc system is very interesting, unique. It took a lot of engineering to pull this off and still retain the power reserve capabilities and have the watch have proper amplitude to keep running and not just really bend over every time that this thing moves. And of course, it moves over the course of the day, so you can kind of see the dials move, and it's just an interesting thing. I think, if you absolutely have every other watch in your collection, or you're into the architecture, the design, something in the vein of, an Elaine Silberstein or an Ichabod, something that is made by a designer, made by an architect, made by someone that cared a lot about the design and something unique than necessarily the raw technical aspects, though this does contain that. I think this could be a really interesting addition for you. Though I will say, this particular piece, we are not retailing at DelRayWatch.com. We sent it to another dealer, largely because I just do not feel comfortable with these the lug system that they have on here with the strap change. I just couldn't personally stand behind that. But hey, if this is a watch for you, they did make 50 pieces, so once in a while these do come up, and it's really not a horrible addition if you can really palette the strap changing capabilities, or you don't mind sending the watch off to Ressence. So, guys, what do we think here about this Ressence Series 1003? Once again, I think it's a very interesting watch. I love the fact that it doesn't have hands, with the exception of the one outreached hand logo on the dial, one of the dials rather. But for me, once again, because of this interesting nuance and, in my personal opinion, quite a hassle and probably a design flaw, even though it's founded by, someone that has advanced experience and studies in architecture and design. So, they're really the professional when it comes to the design. But for me, the strap changing ability and the fact that you have to get this strap module from Ressence, and it's a very old model, nearly 10, 11 years old at this point, that is a bit of a deal breaker for my personal collection. I'm a fan of the simplicity. This is simple in many ways, but certainly not with the mechanics nor the strap changing ability. And I have a small wrist, so I can't just put a stock Ressence strap on this, because the straps are a little bit larger. Maybe they have smaller size if you work directly through them, but that's the reason that I cannot add it to my personal collection. And it did go off to another dealer that does specialize in these kind of interesting independents and more avant-garde watch brands. But what do you all think about Ressence out there? Are there any other watches that you'd like to see me feature here? Please reach out, Instagram, The Real John P, where I do my best to get back to you, and you can check out delraywatch.com. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.